WBNE.
Hello and welcome to episode 31, all about the Palantir, chapter 11, book 3 of the Two Towers, being the 31st part of That's What I'm Talking About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me NC. And psych, got you again. It's Mary Clay from the future. If you don't already know, this episode is a two-parter. So if you haven't listened to the first part, I highly recommend going back and listening to last week's episode. And then you can listen to this episode. Of course, you can do whatever you want. It's your life. I'm not going to tell you how to live it. Just a suggestion that might increase your enjoyment of this podcast. And also just a reminder that this is still audio from the fun times when my computer decided to not. So just keep that in mind. If you hear some weird editing or weird audio being dubbed over or whatever, that I'm just trying my best. Just like all of us in life, I'm trying my best here. So without further ado, here is the rest of the Palantir with Cassandra and Norman of the Lord of the Rings Minute podcast. Enjoy! So now Gandalf and Pippin are off on their own little adventure. And of course, they are riding Shadowfax. Who else? And this is where Tolkien goes off into like I said earlier, his 8th billion rant about how beautiful and magical and wonderful Shadowfax is.
He's the prettiest horse. He's the fastest horse.
Yep. I like this note. You do not ride Shadowfax. He is willing to carry you, or not. If he is willing, that is enough.
I wrote that down too.
Like, oh my god, he's like a weird hipster horse.
He is the lord of all horses.
Yeah, I guess so. Shadowfax to me is like some cool, it's like the horse equivalent of a cool underground bar that you have to know the password to get into because all the other bars are too mainstream. Like, oh, you don't ride Shadowfax. He has to let you ride him. Like, haven't you heard?
You know, weirdly, I think this idea of like the untamable horse that chooses its rider is actually incredibly common in Western fiction.
Yeah.
Well, I bet it's really common nowadays because of Tolkien and because of this and Shadowfax.
Yeah, probably. Because some of that is part of like Black Beauty too, right?
Oh my god, I haven't read that book since I was like 9.
And then like Spirit.
Spirit, yeah.
True.
And even isn't there even some of that in Hidalgo and like all kinds of other stuff?
I feel like that's just the common trope whenever you're doing like a horse movie, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Of
yeah,
like,
this horse is untamable.
Yeah. Like that freaking happens in Felicity, the American Girl doll books, where there's like a horse and there's a crazy old mangy man and he's like, I can't tame her and I'm gonna shoot her, and Felicity's like, I know how to tame her, and she sneaks out every night and goes to ride Penny. That's the name of the horse. I can't believe I remember all of this. Good lord.
She just Crocodile Dundee's this horse.
Oh my god. And she like goes out, she sneaks out every night and rides Penny around in an open field and like teaches her tricks and stuff and tames her. And then there's like one day where I swear the name of the like crazy old man is like Billy Nye or something.
That's so funny.
I have to look this up. Felicity, American Girl doll. Oh, what's his name?
Man, those American Girl doll books. I remember just those being around when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
I had a couple of them.
This is insane. There's American Girl. Obviously there's a wiki for everything, but it's americangirl.fandom.com. Oh, Jiggy Nye. That's his name.
Jiggy.
Wow.
Jiggy Nye. And then Penny is described as a spirited horse.
That's so funny.
Jiggy Nye. I knew it was. Oh my gosh! And the picture that they have of him, he looks like a cantankerous old fool. Oh, it's so creepy. Oh, this is really terrifying. Now that I'm like, I read this as a child. Okay. Anyway, but yeah, that's like a very common thing, I feel like, in a lot. Anything that like has a horse and a girl in it, it's always like, I can tame her. Except for in this case, the little 12-year-old girl is an old wizard.
Is an old man back from the dead.
Yep. But yeah, after we have a, like, in case you forgot, Shadowfax is the greatest horse ever moment, Gandalf is quietly singing to himself. And he's singing this song about the the Palantiri of the old kings. And he says, the name meant that which looks far away. The Palantiri came from beyond Westerness, from Eldamar. The Noldor made them, but there is nothing that's, and so these are things that it sounded like there were many of them, and they were out in different parts of the land for everyone to communicate, and which sounds like a great plan to me.
The poem says 7.
Oh, 7. Yeah. Thank you. I was like, I know it's some, I couldn't remember. I was like, I know it's not 9, but I know it's one of those things where like, it's a particular number that's used a lot in literature.
This paragraph also name drops probably the most historically important elf in the background lore from the Silmarillion. Feanor.
Let's see.
That's probably one of the most important names in the Legendarium.
Yeah.
And it's just casually, just Gandalf, Feanor himself maybe made them.
I know, does Pippin even know who that is?
No. There's no way.
I was gonna say, I all the time joke that like, the hobbits and I are the same because at any given time, we probably know the same exact amount of things. So
there are, right.
If I don't know it, there's a good chance that Pippin doesn't know it.
There are 4 proper nouns in a row that I just don't imagine Pippin knows what means.
Yeah.
Westerness.
Yeah. Oh, I don't either.
Eldamar, Noldor,
because
Feanor.
Yeah, so it's really bad, but my brain goes into whenever Tolkien will start listing a bunch of proper nouns in a row, my brain is automatically like, I'm sure this isn't that important because it's probably him just describing the landscape. And
then you should probably not read the Silmarillion because it is literally all like this.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm concerned about having to cover the Silmarillion because I'm like, I need to do it in an entertaining way, and I don't know at this point how to do it in an entertaining way.
So like the thing about the Greater Legendarium and like all the stuff that's in like Book of Unfinished Tales and Book of Lost Tales 1 and 2 and the Silmarillion is that's all stuff Tolkien wrote before writing this because he wanted to give this world a history before he wrote a story in it.
I know, because that's insane.
It's just like no one writes like this, Tolkien. Before or since.
Pull it up. Let me find this. It was like, so this is a comic. It says, Tolkien teaches intro to fiction. And this is him talking. He says, who here knows the first thing an author must do when beginning their novel? And one of the students says, develop characters. And he says, no, the first step is constructing an entire elf language from scratch. Always. It's like, yeah, sure.
2 of them, in fact.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, but yeah. So this is something of times long ago, and Gandalf says that he says, but there is nothing that Sauron cannot turn to evil uses. Alas, for Saruman, it was his downfall. As I now perceive. Perilous to us all are the devices of an art deeper than we possess ourselves. So this is kind of where we get some answers and conclusions to what the heck happened with Saruman. Like, how did he fall so far? And it was a combination of he found the Palantir and was so obsessed with understanding it and expanding his knowledge. And he looked much farther than he should have in it. And so it was Saruman's own arrogance combined with Sauron's manipulation and evil powers of, whatever. It says, further and further abroad he gazed until he cast his gaze upon Barad-dûr, then he was caught. So that's what happened. So it is nice now that there's a little bit of like, okay, one of the many loose threads has been tied here.
There's also a reference back to one of the most important places that they go through in Fellowship of the Ring in this little section too. But it's not called by the same name, although I think Aragorn gives you its proper name at the time, which is Weathertop, Amon Sul.
Oh, yeah, it does. You're right. I know what you're talking about. It doesn't happen that often, but every now and then I'm like, yeah, that I know that place.
Because it also housed one of these in the past.
Yeah. See, it also mentions minus Anor, minus Ithil.
Yes.
And obviously we know those have huge significance, and everything has significance.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's Minas, right?
I think it's supposed to be Minas, yeah.
Yeah. Because it's Minas Tirith and...
Minas Tirith, Minas Morgul, Minas Anor, Minas Ithil.
Okay.
I like that the fall of Saruman kind of mirrors the fall of Moria. Like, they just got too greedy. They, like, dug too greedily and they dug too deep. And, like, Saruman, like, was too greedy with knowledge, so he cast his gaze too far. And he's just like, oh, well, evil now.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit before this in the chapter, Theoden says, oft evil will shall evil mar. Is like a way he puts this. That when you put your mind to evil deeds, that evil will undo you, is what that's saying, what that sentence means. I just like the way Theoden puts it.
I'm so glad you interpreted that, because I remember reading that sentence over and over, just trying to like force my brain to figure out what it meant. So yeah, that makes sense.
Also, I love Theoden, so I just thought I would point that out.
Yeah. That's like the one thing that your guy says. So.
Yeah, that's like the one thing he says in this chapter. Because Theoden and Treebeard are like two of my favorite characters in the story.
I'm trying to think at this point who are my favorites. I really like. I think I just really like Legolas and Gimli.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard not to, especially in the books.
I know, right? Man, who are my favorites? I want to say, oh no, that's a lot. I would say my favorites are Galadriel and Legolas.
Elves.
I love them both.
I love elves.
The elves.
The elves are the best.
Elves.
They're great. They're great.
Did you enjoy Glorfindel while he was around?
I know. Well, it's funny because I made a lot of fun of his name because he's introduced and like he has long golden hair and it's like flowing in the wind and he's beautiful. And then he's like, "Hi, my name is Glorfindel." What an atrocious name.
So, he was originally supposed to go with them in really early drafts of the story.
Oh, I would have loved that.
He was the one that was going to fight the Balrog and fall in like the earliest draft.
Oh, cool. Interesting. I love hearing stuff like that. Like how J.K. Rowling originally considered killing off either Hagrid or Arthur Weasley. And then she was like, I can't do that to Harry. That's too
No,
mean.
instead I'll kill one of the twins.
That makes it better.
Yeah, instead, let me kill one of the let me kill one of the most loved Weasley children. But I'll leave Percy alive.
Just kill Ron.
Percy.
Just do it.
What? Whoa.
Well, I think Ron was actually supposed to die. I think he was supposed to die in like early imaginings of the series, but she was like, I think that was going to be way too dark. And I remembered that this started off as a children's series, and I stopped that idea right
Just like
there.
Ron instead of Cedric Diggory.
Yeah.
Instead of this character we knew only for a single book.
Rip Cedric.
Rest in peace, Robert
everyone.
Pattinson. Rest in peace.
He's doing fine.
Rest in peace. My favorite thing about Robert Pattinson is how he, like, no one hates the fact that Robert Pattinson was in the Twilight movies as much as Robert Pattinson.
Oh.
And then there was also an interview that Anna Kendrick was giving where someone was asking her about like, oh, do you still talk to any of your co-stars from the Twilight movies? And she was like, I was in Twilight. She's like, I forgot I was in Twilight.
If you have ever listened to the director's commentary on that first Twilight movie, it's like the director.
I have.
Yeah, like the director who got fired, like Robert Pattinson and Kristen Stewart, and they hate everything. And
they rip on the movie the whole
best.
time.
It's the best.
It's so funny. I love it. I
want more commentaries like that. Of just the people that hated the movie they were in.
He made like he makes fun of Edward's pea coat, and there's like one scene where it's a scene where it's like say it out loud, vampire, and what do vampires eat? And then Robert Pattinson goes, cheeseburgers. Like they just don't care at all. It's so best. Funny.
He was probably drunk.
I also remember him talking about like how they had to groom his eyebrows and stuff because there's one shot that they were lining up and they're like, oh wow, your eyebrows, they need some work. And he was like, okay.
Excuse me?
Oh man. But this is not Twilight. This is Lord of the Rings. Thankfully.
Yeah, go through that a chapter at a time.
Right? Can you imagine?
Thankfully, oh my God. This is Lord of the Rings and not Twilight. Right?
Mercifully.
I don't know. I think I do always wonder, like, what am I going to do when I'm done with Tolkien content?
You'll never be done.
Right?
I don't know. I thought when I started this podcast, I don't know, 9 months ago. That's not right. 7 months ago. Sure. I was like, oh yeah, I'll be reading these books for 5 years. And then here I am less than a year into it. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to be done reading the books a lot sooner than I thought.
Well, how many, like ancillary books are there? There's like 9?
More?
No, there's like more than that.
There are, I think that there are 15 volumes to the history of Middle Earth.
Oh my God.
I know, that's...
Because there's the Silmarillion, which is at least like stories. And then Unfinished Tales and Book of Lost Tales are also kind of stories, but some of them aren't really.
Yeah, they're just fragments.
And then there's just like 15 more books that are just not stories at all. It's just about how the books were written.
And his notes.
And his notes and stuff.
Oh my gosh. That could be cool.
Yeah.
To learn his notes and be like...
Just very dense.
Get some insight into what he was thinking.
Just real dense.
Yeah.
Not that this isn't.
I can only imagine. But anyway, so so it's at this point that I was like, okay, obviously this is not the Eye of Sauron. It's the Palantir and not an eyeball. I want to find it. Sorry.
The Pippin saying, "I wish I had known all this before. I had no notion of what I was doing."
Yeah, that. Oh my.
And Gandalf is
yeah,
like, "Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were doing, you little thief."
Yeah. I knew, you knew you were behaving wrongly and foolishly. You told yourself so, though you did not listen. And then Gandalf makes up some, so basically Gandalf is just talking about like, this is the tool that Sauron has been using to control Saruman and has been using to manipulate. And he says, how long, I wonder, has he been constrained to come often to his glass for inspection and instruction? So he's basically just talking about like, yeah, this is a bad thing and it's very dangerous. And that's what prompts Pippin to say, I wish I had known this. Which I feel like, and Gandalf explains in the next paragraph, but that would have been important information to spread to the group of like, hey guys, FYI, I think this glass orb thing is pretty dangerous. So I'm going to keep it close to me and please no one touch it because it's very dangerous.
If you touch this,
you.
Sauron will see you.
Well, he didn't know what it was when Pippin
I
think he was playing dumb.
Really?
I don't...
because it's Aragorn that's like, oh, obviously this is a Palantir because I know everything and I'm Aragorn. And
because in the books I'm perfect.
Yes, and Gandalf's just like, oh, man, you're right. Like,
oh, fam.
Honestly. But, so Gandalf says... I did not tell all you this before because it is only by musing on all that has happened that I have at last understood, even as we ride together. Mm-hmm. And then he also, if I had spoken sooner, it would not have lessened your desire or made it easier to resist. Okay, so I understand that he's only piecing everything together now, but I still feel like there was at least a part of him that was like, my suspicion is that this is not a good thing, and that, also maybe Pippin coming into contact with it could have an effect on him because my like, go with your gut, man. Like, use your wizard instincts or something here.
Right, this is bad D&D group dynamics, Gandalf.
Right, Gandalf.
We need open communication for this to work.
I do love just a little bit further down that same page, Pippin, I should like to know, and then Gandalf cuts him off. Mm-hmm. Mercy.
Right, yeah. Yeah, but I should like to know, Pippin began. Mercy, cried Gandalf. If the giving of information is to be the cure of your inquisitiveness, I shall spend all the rest of my days in answering you. What more do you want to know? And then I like this because Pippin kind of gets back at him, kind of like teases him back after all of these times that he's been made fun of. And Pippin says, the names of all the stars and of all living things and the whole history of Middle Earth and over heaven and of the sundering seas. And then he says, of course, what less? But I am not in a hurry tonight. At the moment, I was just wondering about the Black Shadow. So I like that moment of Pippin pulling Gandalf's leg. Of like, tell me everything now that you're going to answer my questions.
And see, we don't imagine that hobbits know a whole lot about the greater history of Middle-earth. But the fact that he uses the term sundering seas is itself a reference to a really big, important event from, like, prehistory.
Oh. Maybe that's just the term that they, like, colloquially
and they keep
use.
calling it that?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it, like, that name comes from, like, a big event in the Silmarillion.
Oh,
it's called the Sundering Seas for a reason.
Interesting, okay.
So is he using, like, outdated terminology?
No, it's possible that people just call it the Sundering Seas because maybe the hobbits don't know why, I guess. That's just what the men call it and, like, what people have called it around them.
Oh, okay.
But, like,
he knows what it's called.
Right.
He doesn't know why.
Right. But it's just another reference
Makes
to Silmarillion
sense.
lore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I pretty much assume anything that has a capital letter attached to it is a reference to Silmarillion lore.
Yeah, that's pretty safe.
And so, so he asks about the Nazgul, and he says that it's flying to Orthanc because Sauron sent it to go after Saruman, and obviously it's going to get there and realize what's happened. So time is of the essence at this point.
Oh yeah, but importantly, this messenger isn't the messenger that's going to be sent to get Pippin. It's one that would have had to been sent before just to check on Saruman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I'm surprised that, like, and maybe it does come into play or something. I wonder if there's more, there's got to be some, like, more to this because it's very specific that Pippin, he didn't say, oh, hi, I'm Pippin. It says, who are you? And he says, a hobbit. And all that Sauron knows is that a hobbit is carrying the ring. So I'm surprised that, like, they didn't bring up that. It's like they've completely forgotten about Frodo and Sam at this point. Because there's zero mention of them, by the way, at this point.
I think it's just this worry.
And I can't remember.
I think it's just this worry that Saruman has kind of figured out that a hobbit is carrying the ring or that a hobbit is involved. So the idea that he may have told Sauron this and now Sauron has seen a hobbit is troubling to Gandalf because he doesn't know what Saruman knows.
They don't know that we know they know we know.
And the fact that Sauron was amused by the idea that he spoke to a hobbit is troubling to Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
Well, back when Pippin was saying what he saw in his vision, Sauron says, "We shall meet again soon. Tell Saruman that this dainty is not for him." So is he talking about, like, Pippin, or is he talking about the ring?
Both. So Gandalf.
Yeah.
I think Gandalf implies that had Sauron actually mean to question him, he says that had Sauron actually mean to question him, he would have told him everything anyway.
Yeah.
He was lucky that Sauron didn't press him, but also that he wants to probably take him back to Barad-dûr to question him privately because he no longer trusts Saruman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's what I kind of got too, is that he's sending the Nazgul to go and retrieve the Hobbit. so that he can do whatever he wants with the Hobbit. Because I'm assuming at this point that he's thinking, oh, this is the Hobbit that has the ring.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's not thinking...
What?
Because the entire time, the entire way up to this point in the books, everyone's like, what are hobbits doing out here? So oh my God. Sauron probably doesn't even know that there are multiple hobbits out and about. He's probably just like, yeah, it's just the one that I have to worry about right now.
It's like, why would a hobbit ever leave the Shire, let alone more than one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just the one that I have to find. Hence the confusion at the beginning of the book with the orcs taking
Merry and Pippin.
Merry and
Yeah.
Pippin. Yeah, because they're like, oh, we're sent to get hobbits. We found 2 of them. Here we go. We got a 50-50
Right?
chance. But yeah, anyway, so they're riding around, and he points out some places that they've already been, like Helm's Deep, and then he also mentions the glittering caves. He says, do not ask me about them. Ask Gimli if you meet again, and for the first time, you may get an answer longer than you wish. So I love that it's the continuity of Gimli's, like, obsession with the caves and stuff.
Gandalf just likes roasting his traveling companions.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Gimli talks too much about these stupid
And yet
caves.
Gandalf is occasionally
Stupid caves.
the most long-winded of all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's also what Mary digs at him at the start of this chapter. Is he's like, I just wanted to know if we were going to stop
Right?
soon. You didn't have to tell me our you didn't have to give me your 5-year plan.
I just wanted to know where I was camping
Are
for
we
the
gonna
night.
eat soon? Like Gandalf.
I'm a hobbit. I'm hungry and tired.
Yeah, he's like, I have very simple needs, and he asks where we're going because he thought that they were going to stop at Helm's Deep, and he says, to Minas Tirith, before the seas of war surround it. And Gandalf says, it's leagues upon leagues away, so that's fun. He shouts for Shadowfax to run faster, and I also like that he says hope is in speed, because now at this point their plan or their safety is dependent on them getting away or getting there as fast as possible. And Pippin falls asleep in Gandalf's arms, and that's how this chapter and the first half of Two Towers ends.
love the visual in the last sentence of this chapter. As he fell slowly into sleep, Pippin had a strange feeling. He and Gandalf were still as stone, seated upon the statue of a running horse, while the world rolled away beneath his feet with a great noise of wind.
Right. That's good.
Just every now and then, Tolkien pulls out
Tolkien's good
just
at
like
writing stuff.
this really poetic feeling thing.
Right. It's very lyrical.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a good visual, well, not a visual, but like kind of a description of, because he's falling asleep, of what it feels like to be half awake and half asleep, and you're still kind of aware of your surroundings.
Yeah, because he just kind of feels like he's flying along.
Yeah.
I did have one more thing right near the end here. Right after he says leagues upon leagues, he says, thrice as far as the dwellings of King Theoden, and they are more than 100 miles east from here, as the messengers of Mordor fly. So...
That's 300 miles.
So, well, he says more than 100 miles, and then thrice as far would be 300 miles, more than 300 miles. So maybe closer to 4, because he says more than 100 miles, and usually people use that, like, would say, like, more than 100 if it's, like, significantly more, enough to matter. So, it's probably, like, 400 miles. And then he says that they're going to make it in 2 days.
Well, I thought they were going to Edoras.
Goal.
Isn't that, maybe that's what it's saying, is that they'll be in Edoras in 2 days. Wait.
Well, he says, and in 2 days hence, 2 days thence you shall see the purple shadow of Mount Minduluin and the walls of the Tower of Denethor white in the morning.
Oh, yeah. That's fast.
So they're moving.
Yeah.
And we know they're stopping for the night each time, because he says they're going to stop at Edoras for the night. They're going to find some hole somewhere in the realm around Edoras.
Yeah. I mean, if Tolkien is going to put a timeline on how fast they're traveling, I would rather him, like, highball it than lowball it, because we've seen him drag out journeys.
Yes.
So I'd rather us be like, oh, that seems unusually fast, rather than, that seems unusually slow.
So, and I before we started recording, like, when I was looking at this, I was just like, well, how fast does a horse go?
Okay, wait. So, if he wants to get to Edoras by dawn, that's more than
150 miles.
That's
like
more than 100 miles in, like, 6 hours on horseback?
Yeah.
Is that, like...
So, right, because the fastest a horse runs is, like, 55.
Yeah.
And they cannot do that for very long.
No.
So, Shadowfax is just insanely fast for a horse. Because he's able to maintain He's able to maintain a speed of, like, at least 60 miles an hour to be able to do this in 2 days. From Edoras to Minas Tirith.
Yeah, he's insane. he's
The lord of all horses.
He's Shadowfax. Where does...
One of the Miras.
Yeah, also, like, when he's bragging about Shadowfax, he says, he's running now as fast as the swiftest horse could gallop, but that is not fast for him. So... the speed that they are going isn't even the fastest he can go.
And it's faster than any other horse in Middle-earth.
Shadowfax is ridiculous. Yeah. So he's just,
This is the Barry Allen of horses.
I don't even know. You've never... Yeah. He's insane. But anyway, yeah, so this chapter ends, or it ended, and I was like, okay, I guess this is Gandalf and Pippin's adventure now? I just immediately had several, like, thoughts and questions. I was like, so what are Aragorn and the rest of them doing? What's their plan? Are they gonna meet Gandalf later? Are they doing their own thing? Did I miss something where Gandalf was like, oh, go here? Because I know Théoden's going back to Helm's Deep with some of his men. And then he leaves the rest of his men for Aragorn and crew.
Well, it says in this chapter they're going to Helm's Deep and then they're going to Dunharrow, which is a place you haven't been yet, I don't think, in the story.
I don't think so yet. I was like, I need to know what's happening with Aragorn and Legolas. Where are they going? Are we going to meet up with them later? What's happening? I don't want to be separated
and wherever
from them.
Legolas is going, Gimli will follow.
Right.
I was like, also, you've separated Merry and Pippin. This does not sit well with the universe. and then I just wrote, well, ... time for the Frodo and Sam section now. And I guess I'm going to learn to like Sam and Frodo by the end of this book.
Yeah, it's funny because when I picked up the book to read the chapter to do this, I did not remember where this, like, what this part of the story was, because it's been too long since I've read it. And it opens up with all of these events, and everything that happens in this chapter is something that we, like, recently discussed on Lord of the Rings Minute, because it's in the Return of the King movie.
Oh.
So we just, like, recently talked about the movie version of all these events.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
cool.
it's just weird
but
how
also,
it lined up
I mean,
that way.
I'm glad that the timing worked out. Yeah, that worked out. But it's weird how they chose to, like, put certain things in some movies that are in the book. So the biggest one was that Boromir dies at the end of Fellowship, the movie, but he doesn't die until the beginning of Two Towers.
Yeah, it's in the first chapter of Two
book.
Towers, right?
Yeah. It's not, it's like the first page of Two
Yeah.
Towers.
I mean,
which I was laughing about because I think I will say my like least favorite character I think is actually Boromir. I just like to rag on him, but I like joked all the time, I joked at the very start when I was reading this. I was like, oh, the departure of Boromir. He's going to do something dramatic and he's going to leave and, I don't know, storm out. And then, like, I get to the bottom of the page and it was like, Aragorn found him covered with arrows and dying. And I was like, oh, it means
surrounded by the bodies of, like, 60 orcs that he killed.
he's dead. I was like, his departure is his death. The departure of his soul from his body.
Shuffled off this mortal coil.
Is what it meant. Yeah. So
That's so funny.
but yeah, anyway, yeah, so it'll be interesting for me to like line up to be like, oh, this thing was in Two Towers, but they didn't talk about it or they didn't address it until Return of the King or
there
whatever.
is actually
because
there's like a big thing, like an event that is going to happen in book 4 that I remember watching the movie and I was just like, where is this? Like, did they just not include this? And like,
I was
the way,
like, how are they not going to do this?
yeah, and the way that they like split it up was like stressing me out because I was just like, what? But they,
yeah, because the Two Towers movie is almost entirely arriving in Rohan through the Battle of Helm's Deep, and then stuff with the Ents. But then
Yes.
all the wrap up is saved for the beginning of Return of the King.
yeah.
Okay. Yes, I've been told that Helm's Deep is like one of the biggest battles in cinematic history. And it's funny because the chapter Helm's Deep is less than 15 pages, and the actual battle itself is like 5 pages or 8 pages. And because when I was reading it, I was like, oh, it's just a battle. Okay. It's just a battle. It's a battle with like a crap ton of orcs, but it's a battle. And then my guess was like, no. This is like the biggest battle ever to be created for the screen. It's like 2 hours long.
And then they topped it in Return of the King. Like, they just did
Yeah.
even more.
I think Helm's Deep.
Oh,
Helm's Deep
geez,
is
I'm
like
so excited.
easily over an hour long. Easily.
We spent at least, I don't know if the battle itself is from the orc blowing the war horn
Well, don't
until the end of the battle. I
Yeah.
don't think it's an hour.
I feel it felt like an hour.
But if you with all the lead up stuff, I think it's easily over an hour.
Yeah.
From them arriving at
Oh,
Helm's Deep
I
to them
totally
leaving
believe
Helm's
it.
Deep is easily over an hour.
Well, that's what's the interesting part about the movies, and that's why, like, I'm not as concerned of, like, oh no, they totally messed up by putting Boromir's death in Fellowship instead of Two Towers, is because the way that you can follow, there are so many different people and perspectives to follow in these books and movies, and it's definitely a lot easier to be able to tell
Right.
the story in that way, where you can't in a movie. You are able to jump around between these perspectives, and
Yeah.
it's in a way that makes sense from like a storytelling perspective, and visually you're able to do that where you can't do that in a book, or maybe if you do it in a book it won't be as good, or it'll be confusing. So it's not going to surprise me or anything when I'm watching the movies when that happens, as long as it makes sense within the story framework, and it's maybe it's just better for chronologically speaking.
Yeah,
I
Two
don't know.
Towers is the one that definitely is the most different structurally from its book.
Yeah, that one I
counterpart.
totally get, and that one makes a lot of sense to me, because if the movie had been structured the way that the book is structured, it's like, all right, we got an hour and a half A+ content with my favorite characters, Aragorn, Legolas, Gimli. Ooh, look at that, Gandalf is back. Who would have thought? Amazing battle, Helm's Deep, 10 hours long, perfect. And then the last half of the movie is just Sam and Frodo, and I guess Gollum shows up too. Like, that's a horrible movie.
Oh yeah, as laid out, you can't possibly film movies for the story as it's written. It would have been terrible.
Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. What would you guys like to plug or share with the audience?
Well, if you're listening to this and you are familiar with the movies, again, we're from Lord of the Rings Minute, and we've been covering them minute by minute for the past while. We're 90 minutes into Return of the King?
Yep.
So we have a whole 2.5 hours more to go. But you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're from the website duelinggenre.com. And if you're intrigued by the movies by minutes format, there's 10 other podcasts for different movies on our site alone. So you can check those out. It's we're not all involved, but we guest on a lot of them. So.
Yeah. And then there's a bunch of other non-movies by minutes podcasts on the network too.
And you can follow our podcast account on Twitter. We're at LOTR Minute. And we have a Facebook page too, but
Oh, do you guys want to share where people can follow you guys personally on social media? You don't have to, but
I don't really do the social media thing.
Yeah. I'm at Dark-Hearted Rose on Twitter if you like memes and weird out of context stuff. I don't know.
I mean, that sounds like a great combination of things to find on the internet, so I'm in. And then also, what is a form of media, it could be a TV show, movie, book, anything, that you would recommend to people if they already enjoy Lord of the Rings?
Ooh. Because Lord of the Rings is like such it's like such a cornerstone of the genre, but it's also so different from everything else.
Yeah, because most people have like taken definite influence from Lord of the Rings, but have all kind of tried to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes really drastically. Right now, one of the things I'm thinking of is if you just like high fantasy in general, Dragon Prince deserves your attention.
Ooh, yeah. Dragon Prince is good.
Is that
it's a
is that the
Netflix
Netflix
original
series?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I need to watch it because I feel like I added that to my queue when it originally was put on Netflix. I don't even know, like a year ago or so now. Because I think all of us out there are looking for a void to fill in our hearts that Avatar: The Last Airbender left.
It's actually it's created by the head writer of Avatar.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I saw. So that's why I think I was like, oh, I should watch this so I can fill that desire and need.
Yeah.
It takes a little bit to adjust to the animation style, but by season 2, it becomes fluid enough that you just don't even really notice anymore.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to I know I like asking this for like people who are listening who maybe like Lord of the Rings isn't their favorite, but they want to get more invested. But I'm like, oh, that sounds great for me. I'm going to go watch that now.
As far as another...
I'm looking for some new stuff to watch on Netflix.
As far as another fantasy book, I would recommend Mistborn, which is written by Brandon Sanderson.
Oh, I love him.
That one's really good. It's got a really fun mentor character and a really fun lady protagonist, so.
I haven't read anything in a while. I need to get on that.
That's okay. You don't have to give a book. The 2 recommendations are more than enough. I'm waiting for someone to like give me a really random like, oh, I heard this song in the radio that was inspired by Lord of the Rings, and I'll be like, oh, great.
There is
cool.
actually
I will check that out.
a whole
And then,
subgenre of Scandinavian metal that is like fantasy metal, like directly inspired by Tolkien.
And then a whole bunch of other stuff. Like fantasy metal is a
right.
thing. Like there's
Scandinavian metal.
I think
I
there's
don't remember the
a
name
metal
of the
band named Amon Amarth.
Probably. There's a band where like they have a whole concept album that's just stuff about Lord of the Rings.
And Christopher Lee did metal singing.
Yeah.
Oh
he
my
played Saruman in the
gosh.
movies.
That's amazing. Oh,
yeah.
that's amazing. I'm going to have to look at that's extremely interesting.
I think Christopher Lee did like a metal album.
Scandinavian metal.
Christopher Lee did a metal album about like a king of England.
What? That's awesome.
Honestly, anything that these like really distinguished actors, like it never surprises me when these like super distinguished actors are like, they also have these really interesting but niche side hobbies where like it wouldn't surprise me at all if I learned that like Ian McKellan was like a speed crocheter or something.
I mean, people just have hobbies, right?
I'd be like, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. All right, cool. So now is the part where I have to do a bunch of my credits, and I apologize for you having to sit
You're
there
fine.
for a second.
We understand.
Yeah, we have copy to read too.
Okay, great. That's What I'm Talking About is a proud member of WB&E. To learn more about WB&E and shows on the network, go to WB&E.org. Speaking of shows on the network, have you tried listening to Sincerely Us? It's a casual musical theater lover fans podcast. Sure. It's with my favorite Broadway gal pals, Becca and Eni, and you can learn more about that now.
Dear listener, today's going to be a good day, and here's why.
Because today, you're about to find your new favorite theater podcast. I'm Becca.
And I'm Eni, and we're the host of Sincerely Us, a podcast for the casual musical theater fan. And when we say casual, we mean casual.
We don't know every show in existence, and we don't pretend to.
Our show is mostly about how perfect Jeremy Jordan is.
And what we would do if we met Lin-Manuel Miranda on the street.
I would be unable to move or form words.
This is a show for theater nerds, by theater nerds. Every Wednesday on WB&E.
Sincerely, us.
You're gonna have to get used to that shtick. We use it every single episode.
The cover art is by Graphite, aka Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TolkienAboutPod. There's also a Facebook group that will always be linked in the description because I haven't gotten a URL that is easy to say yet. You can find me on Twitter at MCWhatsup and Instagram at MCTurnDownForWhat. And you can also do you like this?
That's so good.
Thank you. I finally changed the majority of my Twitter hood. I don't know. My at name was MC4 or MCWatt416 because 416 is my birthday, and I don't know. And so I was like, I want to change it to something that's fun. And then a couple weeks ago, I was trying out some new stuff. Or like testing out new stuff and names and whatnot, and I found out that "What's up" with like 7 U's was available, and I was like, "Can I take this?" And Tyler, one of the producers for the show, was like, "Please don't do that."
That's so funny.
And I was like, and then it just occurred to me a couple weeks ago. I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I've tried MC What's Up," so that worked anyway. Anywho, you can support the podcast on Patreon and become a patron. Go to patreon.com/TolkienAboutPod. The sponsor for this week's episode is Mats Ferroli, I think is how to say your last name. But then again, everyone in Discord went so long saying your name wrong. So what do I know? Thank you so much for being a sponsor of the podcast. It means so much to me. And with all that being said, Cassandra and Norman, do you have any final parting words for the audience?
I'm actually really sad that, well, I don't know, you might be through with Return of the King before we're done with Return of the King, so we would be interested to, like, listen to your, like, perspective as you, like, watch the movies and stuff, because it's, like, we always theorize on the podcast, like, oh, like, I wonder if anyone, like, has just read, like, or, I don't know, like, we were talking about this off mic, and...
It's like, what would it be like for someone to kind of listen to the show having not seen Lord of the Rings?
Yeah, or have, like, no greater context for everything, so this was really fun. Thank you for having us on.
I very much stopped myself from spoiling a lot of things.
Yeah, I know.
I know, it can be hard. It can be hard.
Depending on how quickly you get through book 4, we might be able to have you on for stuff that happens a little over halfway through Return of the King if you're interested. I have to look at my
schedule, but we'll
I
chat.
know we're gonna have to, like, I want to figure something out, but at the same time I want to go into the movies really because like it's so rare nowadays that you go into something with like a blank slate.
Yes.
And well, I mean, technically I won't be going into the movies with a blank slate because I'll have read the books in great detail at that point, but I am excited to like watch the movies for the first time, and even though I've seen Fellowship, I remember nothing about it. But I'm really interested to like watch it and be like, so this is what these things are all about, huh? Okay. I'm really excited for their taking the hobbits to Isengard.
Yes.
The hobbits.
Really excited for that. Oh, it's great. And that's what I'm talking about.